Welcome to Matters of DeCorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. Until I get a new microphone for my lavalier mic, I'm back to the boom over here. But it served me well for quite some time, and maybe a little sound editing will help out. We'll find out. I'll let you know. I wanted to talk today about winning. In particular, I wanted to talk about victory. What constitutes winning, and how this leads to experience in role-playing games, and maybe in more general applications. We'll see if I can apply this. In a historical perspective, when it comes to role-playing games, the Dungeons and Dragons started out as a very complicated war game. Had individual units moving around a map, and when your units were still standing and the other units' guys were down, it was over, and the guy who had units standing won. Basically, chess with a lot more rules and harder to paint pieces. Through role-playing into it, and people found that they really enjoyed getting into the rules, you can have entire games where you don't pull out a map. I've done Theater of the Mind for quite some time. Got a map to do the Tuesday games, and it helped a lot. I've used maps, I've used not maps, but that's tactical play, where you set out the miniatures and move stuff around, and that is a classic warfare simulation. War games have been around forever. Well, for as long as people have been setting things up to represent troops and knocking them down to represent them being killed. Every role-playing game out there has a combat system in it. Well, the vast majority of them. There may be a few that skirt the issue either with a universal mechanic or by encouraging a more storytelling approach where there doesn't need to be a combat system, just a resolution system of some sort. But all of them account for the possibility of combat. You can't simulate high literature and storytelling without conflict, and conflict most often means combat. Hand to hand, or unit to unit, or vehicle to vehicle, or star empire to star empire. When you're talking about the stories that people generally tell with role-playing games, you're talking about some form of combat. There may be puzzles and stories, characters to deal with, social situations to work out. You can use diplomacy or higher magics, any number of things. But there's a conflict. There is some form of combat that may or may not resolve it. At the end of this, there is going to be someone who has won the combat and someone who has lost. Traditionally. I have been blessed over the course of my life, and I would say in particular over the past 10 or 20 years or so, with amazingly good groups. I have had some phenomenal game masters. I have mentioned a number of their names today. My co-writer Victor Gibson, absolutely amazing. Having the opportunity to play with him or have him in a game is a joy. Michael Shields, David Dalton, friends of mine who are incredible storytellers who can either take a scenario presented in print or generate one that leads to a stressful, tension-filled, conflict-laden situation, one of the solutions of which is combat. One of. I have learned from all of these people and thrown my own life experiences and game experiences into the mix. And yeah, it's about combat. It's not about the combat. The combat is a tool. Conflict is what it's about. And conflict comes in a number of different flavors. You have the person versus another person, or the person versus a monster, or the person versus their environment, or the person versus themselves. There's a lot of different forms that conflict comes in. And in a good campaign of a role-playing game, the players will encounter all of these and more. Conflict with their deity, conflict with their destiny, conflict with concepts and societal structures that are anathema to their motivation and alignment and their path of thinking. It's really all about conflict. I've said before, you do not win a role-playing game in a traditional board game, card game, chess match kind of fashion. When you are sitting around a table with a group of people telling that joint story together, and the game master is laying out a scenario, and the players are following along and filling that world with their characters' actions and what their characters build and create, there isn't going to be a winner and a loser at that table. There shouldn't be. I understand that there are game masters who feel this is a conflict across the table, that they are playing against the players and they are trying to beat them at something while the players are trying to beat the GM, that someone is going to come out on top of this conflict. That is not without some reason. That is not without some merit. There can be a competitive nature to role-playing games. I don't like that. It's mostly because I feel that everyone at that table has won. The players, not the characters on the table. The players sitting at the table rolling dice. Even the GM, everyone wins if everyone walks away with a story. If something happens there that is so spectacular and so amazing, so thought-provoking, and so engaging that you tell stories about it 10 years later, then you've won. Then everyone has won that experience. That leaves the characters, the fictional constructs of will and imagination on that table, going through these things in an imaginatory fashion. I may have just created a word. The story dictates their victory conditions. When this kingdom is defeated, you have won. When this evil wizard has been defeated, you have won. When this Star Empire has stopped enslaving these people, you have won. When the Doomsday Weapon has been destroyed, you have won. And in general, these conditions are best met, or certainly most finally met, through some form of combat. Actual fighting. Swords clashing, guns going off, people jumping around off chandeliers, stabbing people with rapiers, explosions, fire, massive floods. Combat. This is not, however, the only option. When you have a table, as I have been so amazingly fortunate to have, where everyone gets on the same page and no one is married to the path of that adventure. When the DM or GM looks at what the players are doing and says, well, I had a story planned, but they are taking it to the side and this is really clever. I'm going to go with it and see what happens. That is when you find out that violence is not only not necessarily the best solution, but it is only one of a vast number of them. Diplomacy, charisma, persuasion, guile, subterfuge. Tactics, strategy, not the moving figures about a map class of tactics, but tactical thinking, arranging resources. There are as many different ways to solve a conflict as there are minds thinking about how to do it. I have an AA in communications, focused in theater arts. But as I was studying to get this degree, I was part of the gaming club at my college in St. Louis, the Knights of Ithilien. Hi guys, if you're watching, miss you. And that turned out to be a very interesting confluence of events in my life. Because when you are studying communications, you are studying how to deal with people, how to interpret people's words and actions, emotions, the different types, how close they are to you, or proxemics or kinesics, how they're moving, their haptics, how they involve touch in their conversation, even before you get to words and voice tone and all the paralinguistics involved. And that makes you a good game master in many ways, because you can read the table a little bit faster. You can get a point across a little bit more effectively. And when someone can't tell you exactly what is on their mind, you can get about half of it from what everything but their words is telling you. And then there's group dynamics and organizational classes and psychology. And all in all, oral interpretation and acting, obviously, and script writing. I was taking a degree to be a game master. I would recommend AAA in communications if you want to. If someone came up to me and said, what do I take in college so I can run games better? What degree do I get in games? I don't know if there is a role-playing game degree at this point in time, and I can get game design, that's more computer games, but an associate's in communication will take you far in gaming. Has its other uses too. And part of what that brought me was the ability to lay something out in front of the party, something insoluble. I don't come up with solutions to my problems. I just come up with problems. I come up with problems that sound like they would be impossible to beat. And I'm never right. They're not impossible to beat. I just haven't thought of a solution. There may be difficulties preventing easy solutions from showing up, but people don't come to your table for easy problems. People come to your table because the world is ending and only these heroes can save it. You put that problem out on a table in front of people. They've got their characters, they've got the words on the character sheet and the numbers associated with those words. They've got their dice to get their chances of whether they're going to succeed or fail at knowing things or seeing things or fighting things, and they put their heads together. That right there is an amazing thing to see. I'm going to talk about my Tuesday night D&D group. For reasons I will mention at the end of this video. I've had my last session with them. I'm going to miss that experience tremendously because these people are amazing. We've got 3 hours in one of these sessions. Well, we push a little bit longer because the store will stay open past its closing time, or at least let us stay in past its closing time so we can finish up a scenario. But we won't have that long. There's going to be a fight. The fight is going to take a while. So you want to get into the action as soon as possible. And sometimes just sometimes they will take half an hour to figure out how they want to go to a door, how they want to approach this village, how they want to examine this problem. They will throw it around the circle. That is my reward for giving them a problem that they have to think about, is I get to watch them think. Because you can't just sit back and silently ruminate on the problem, because this isn't everyone coming up with their own solution. This is everyone contributing to a group solution. It is an amazing thing to watch. And watching a group of people put their imaginary feet in your imaginary world and kick its imaginary tires and light some of your imaginary furniture on fire is one of the most rewarding things a game master can experience. Yeah, they're going to fight your monsters, and they're going to kill them. That's what player characters do. They kill monsters. They raise armies to the ground. They burn empires to ashes. That's their job. They're player characters. There's stuff on their sheet specifically for them to do that stuff. Sometimes they're going to lose. Oftentimes they're going to win. And the better the group thinks about a problem, the more complete that process is for them, the more rewarding it is for you as a game master. Victory comes at costs. Different types of victories, different conditions of victory have varying costs. You lay down a problem as a game. There is an invading army. There is a war band that has advanced weaponry, and they're going to be destroying entire paths in front of them. There's a shipment of narcotics that's been taken. There's a computer that has data in it, and it needs to be broken into at some point. Someone needs to get that data to save a life or get the vaccine to little Cindy in the hospital. What constitutes victory is what you have defined. When you can do this with what you put together at this table, you come up with a plan for accomplishing this goal, and if your characters can succeed at that plan, you win. It's a fairly simple formula. You see that it's take it to its furthest extent, it's Ocean's 11. You've got interactive characters with different skills, applying them towards this grand heist. Its simplest forms, it's Lord of the Rings. You guys take this thing over there. We'll stand over here and fight stuff. I know, way more complicated than that, but man, it's elementary goal levels. Put this thing in there. How that happens is what happens at that table. How the ring gets into Mount Doom is what the player characters have decided is going to happen. Well, man, this thing's really powerful and it's going to subvert the will of just about anybody who picks it up. Well, I'll try it, now it's going to subvert your will. I'll try it, well, it's going to subvert your will. Don't hobbits have to save against this kind of thing? Well, yeah, they do. You know, it's still going to wear them down. Yeah, but I got saves. I'll do it. That process can go overboard, by the way. I mentioned Victor Gibson earlier. He ran a game years ago, almost 20 years ago. Time flies. In Made to the Ascension, we played Agents of the Technocracy. 4 characters from 4 different divisions of the Technocracy, each of whom had the first name John, and we came to be known as the 4 Johns of the Apocalypse, because they would put problems in front of these characters and we would blow the problems away and nuke 5 or 6 other things while we were at it. We had tremendous groupthink. We had an incredible group dynamic. The characters were super well together. The players were able to process things together very quickly. Our brainstorming sessions were legendary. And eventually, I realized that one of us had to be in charge of watching this thing happen. It's like, okay, we need to get this thing across the street. Well, I can get this thing partway across the street. Well, I can get an eagle to carry it the rest of the way across the street. Oh, I can get a catapult to launch. Oh, we can get a catapult to send it halfway, have the eagle catch it and drop it over here. Oh, when it gets over there, there can be fire coming out of it. And it's like, and half an hour later, we've got the Ringling Brothers Circus arranged around this event. And I'm like, yeah, but what were we trying to do again? Hint, when I am the voice of reason among your players, something is wrong. My number one most often said statement when I am playing a role-playing game is, I have a bad idea. Because my ideas are terrible. It doesn't mean they don't work, it just means they're not good ideas. You can overblow a victory condition just like you can fail to meet it. You can do so much. Well, we're going to wipe out not only the army of that kingdom, but we're going to burn the entire geographic location to the ground. Yay! And now you're the heroes of good who've murdered an entire kingdom of women and children who had nothing to do with the conflict. Victory is not a line to cross. Victory is a target to hit. It is a bullseye, not a finish line. And how you win tells you how those characters think, tells you things about that character. The characters who would burn down an entire kingdom just to beat its army. You know something about them. You know how they are morally. You know how they think. You know what kind of people they are, and that you might not necessarily want to align yourself with them. You know, they are people to be feared as opposed to allied with. I have found a tendency in myself, in people around me, in games, to pick up extra victory conditions as we go. Well, yeah, we can beat them, but can we save those people too? Isn't beating them about saving those people? Can we save those people without beating them? Sometimes you can redefine the victory conditions. Sometimes you just needed to look a little bit closer at the situation to understand where victory actually sat. Maybe victory isn't in that conflict. Maybe victory is in your problem solving. Maybe victory is more about who you save than who you defeat. And that's a whole other level of storytelling. When your character, who has access to as much firepower as a Federation starship, looks at a situation that could certainly be solved with a brace of quantum torpedoes, and finds the person he needs to talk to and talks to them. It is a good group of players who can find that solution. It is a good GM who lets that happen. All too often, role-playing games measure your success in experience points, or you kill this monster, you get X many experience points. You get enough experience points, you go up a level and advance. And that's the traditional model. That's how it has been from time immemorial. And that's not necessarily how it has to be. In fact, I also give, I throw a pile of monsters on the table, or a group of pirates working for a lich, if you fight them and beat them, there is a certain amount of experience you get. I will give you that experience for finding a way to not fight them. If you overcome that obstacle without resorting to bloodshed or violence, though your characters are certainly capable of it, and they might not all make it out in one piece, but you could certainly get through it, Or you could find a way to defuse the situation. And that's just as valuable to me. Yeah, it's not as much time at the table often. It can be more sometimes. But it is a victory. You've overcome this obstacle. You have done what was necessary. You got past this to what you needed to get to. Yay, you win. You get experience, you advance. You get your reward for this situation. And when you have a group with that kind of flexibility, your stories are amazing. Not every good story is about a fight that you won. Sometimes the best stories are about a solution you came up with. Whether it's combat or something, a clever thought, or an interesting strategy, or a moment of mercy, that is where the story can get epic and unforgettable. I've been talking a few weeks about things coming up I had to talk about. And yeah, I'm probably going to talk about them now. I've been doing this for 20 years. I have been sitting at a computer and creating art and writing and putting it all together and selling it a bit at a time. And it has been fulfilling in many ways, and not particularly financially. Thank you to all of my patrons and all of my customers. Everyone who subscribes, thank you. I appreciate your contributions. I'm not done yet. I've got things I need to write. I've got things that still need to come out, and some of this is going to go a little bit further than I had at first intended. It's not going to be my only thing. I have been offered an unparalleled opportunity to do something a little bit different with the vast majority of my time, that being earning a paycheck. Things are still up in the air. I got to be a little bit tight with some of the details still at this point in time. It's legitimate. I'm not going to be trading in black market organs, although if someone knows an opening that I might be qualified for, hit me in the comments. It's in my field. It will get me out. It will be more active. It's going to mean I'm going to use the hot tub and a lot of painkillers, but I have to redefine what victory is for me at this point in time. I'm 50 years old. And sometimes you stretch. And things are going to be a little different. You've noticed these have been coming out sporadically this month. I'm going to try and tidy that up and make them happen a little bit more often on schedule. I still need to make up one or two for July. That's going to happen. I'm not that worried about it. That being said, watch this space for developments. And if you are in Southern California at the last part of this year, we might have a better chance to meet. In the meantime, thank you very much for your time and attention. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If you have your own experiences with redefining victory or finding new ways to get to a victory solution on your game board or in life, leave me a comment below. I'll love getting a comment. You'll love leaving me one. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, why not? My videos are awesome. In the meantime, go ahead and click the subscribe button. If you click the subscribe button, click the little notification bell next to the subscribe button so you get notified when my videos become available. If you would like to contribute in a more meaningful way, I invite you to hit me at my Patreon page, www.patreon.com/ScottCorum, and consider donating. Absolutely anything helps and allows me to make better videos more often. In the meantime, thank you very much for your attention. Watch this space. Interesting things are happening. I'm Scott Corum. This is What Does Matter to Me, and I will see you next time in the next Matters of DeCorum.